kesulitan kewangan.
Dia tak insurans. Ini ada cek juga. Cek sana.
Langkah kecil yang kita ambil hari ini mampu mengubah impian menjadi kenyataan. Dengan inisiatif,
Encik Ahmad ini deposit.
disiplin,
Terima kasih saya. Okey, terima kasih Encik Ahmad.
kesabaran,
Dia benci dia. Tak benci.
kesedaran, dan perancangan jangka panjang. Kita dapat belajar untuk menyimpan, mengurus kewangan, melabur dengan bijak, dan melindungi mereka yang tersayang. Kebebasan kewangan bermula daripada anda.
We all have a story we don't always tell. Behind these smiles, not everyone finds it easy to get by, stretching each hard-earned ringgit to ensure a better future for our loved ones. Prioritizing needs and wants to save enough for a place you can call home.
Okay guys, lepas korang isi je borang ni, korang akan dapat apa yang korang
Protecting ourselves from falling prey to greed and false promises of high returns.
Ha. Apa lagi you tunggu? I'll go home, I'll then think about it.
Worrying about those that rely on you most. Especially when life takes an unexpected turn. What may seem like small decisions for some can have life-changing consequences to others. Life can be unpredictable. None of us knows what will happen tomorrow. The choices we make every day bring us closer to achieving our financial goals.
Polis berjaya menempaskan satu sindiket skim cepat kaya dengan tertangkap.
With the right skills and knowledge, we can avoid financial pitfalls.
Kalau saya ada insurans, saya tak perlu risau sebenarnya.
By taking early steps today, we can protect those nearest and dearest to us from financial hardship.
Dia tak insurans. Ini ada cek juga. Cek sana.
These small steps we take and the choices we make over time can turn our dreams into reality. With self-driven action,
Encik Ahmad ini deposit.
discipline,
Terima kasih saya. Okey, terima kasih Encik Ahmad.
patience,
Dia benci dia. Tak benci.
awareness, long-term planning, we can learn to save, manage, invest wisely, and protect our loved ones. Financial freedom starts with you.
Kita jarang bercerita tentang pahit maung hidup kita. Di sebalik setiap senyuman, kehidupan yang ditempuh bukan mudah. Setiap ringgit dibelanjakan dengan berhemat demi masa depan mereka yang tersayang. Utamakan keperluan daripada kemahuan dan menabung demi impian sebuah kediaman yang selesa.
Okay guys, lepas korang isi je borang ni, korang akan dapat apa yang
Lindungi
korang
diri
nak.
kita daripada sifat tamak dan janji manis yang menawarkan kekayaan mudah dan untung yang besar.
Ha. Apa lagi you tunggu?
I'll go home. I'll then think about it.
Bimbang tentang nasib insan yang bergantung hidup pada kita. Apabila kehidupan dilanda musibah, walaupun setiap keputusan yang dibuat nampak kecil, tetapi setiap pilihan mampu mengubah kehidupan. Langit tidak selalu cerah. Tiada sesiapa tahu apa yang akan terjadi esok. Pilihan yang kita buat setiap hari boleh membantu kita mencapai maklumat kewangan.
Polis berjaya menempaskan satu sindiket skim cepat
Dengan
kaya
kemahiran
dengan tertangkap
dan
di
pengetahuan kewangan yang tepat, kita boleh mengelak daripada menjadi mangsa penipuan.
Kalau saya dan insurans, saya tak perlu risau sebenarnya.
Dengan mengambil langkah awal, kita dapat melindungi mereka yang tersayang daripada kesulitan kewangan.
Dia dekat insurans. Ini ada check gitu. Check sana.
Langkah kecil yang kita ambil hari ini mampu mengubah impian menjadi kenyataan. Dengan inisiatif,
Encik Ahmad ni deposit.
disiplin,
Terima kasih saya. Okey, terima kasih Encik Ahmad.
kesabaran,
Tak benci dia. Tak benci.
kesedaran, dan perancangan jangka panjang. Kita dapat belajar untuk menyimpan, mengurus kewangan, melabur dengan bijak, dan melindungi mereka yang tersayang. Kebebasan kewangan bermula daripada anda.
We all have a story we don't always tell. Behind these smiles, not everyone finds it easy to get by, stretching each hard-earned ringgit to ensure a better future for our loved ones. Prioritizing needs and wants to save enough for a place you can call home.
Okay guys, lepas korang isi je borang ni, korang akan dapat apa yang korang
Protecting ourselves from falling prey to greed and false promises of high returns.
Ha. Apa lagi you tunggu?
I'll go home. I'll then think about it.
Worrying about those that rely on you most. Especially when life takes an unexpected turn. What may seem like small decisions for some can have life-changing consequences to others. Life can be unpredictable. None of us knows what will happen tomorrow. The choices we make every day bring us closer to achieving our financial goals.
Polis berjaya menempaskan satu sindiket skim cepat kaya dengan tertangkap.
With the right skills and knowledge, we can avoid financial pitfalls.
Kalau saya dan insurans, saya tak perlu risau sebenarnya.
By taking early steps today, we can protect those nearest and dearest to us from financial hardship.
Dia dekat insurans. Ha, ini ada check gitu. Check sana.
These small steps we take and the choices we make over time can turn our dreams into reality. With self-driven action,
We hope everyone is well and keeping safe. Thank you for joining us today in this first session of the Financial Literacy Webinar series. Today's webinar is titled #Be Prudent, Take Control of Your Finances, organized by Bank Negara Malaysia, the co-chair of the Financial Education Network, or FEN. This morning's webinar will be an interesting one where you will be able to gain insights on how, by just making small changes in managing money, you can make a big difference, especially in these very challenging times. Ladies and gentlemen, the month of October has also been earmarked as the Financial Literacy Month. It is a month dedicated to inform, educate, and support Malaysians in practicing sound financial management. Various activities are being organized across the nation by all the 8 members of FEN and their partners. For more details on the Financial Literacy Month activities, please do check out the website at www.fenetwork.my. Ladies and gentlemen, some housekeeping rules before we commence. Should you have any questions to pose to any of our panelists later, please submit your questions via Slido/BePrudent, or alternatively, you can scan the QR code on the screen. This information will be on your screen throughout the webinar. Lastly, to help us to improve the content of the webinar in the future, we would very much appreciate it if you can spend some time to fill up the feedback form at www.fenetwork.my/feedback at the end of this session. Now, with much honor, I would like to welcome our distinguished and esteemed panelists for today's session. Encik Azadin Ngah Tasir, Chief Executive Officer of Agency Counselling dan Pengurusan Kredit, better known as AKPK, and Datuk Dr. Paul Selvaraj, Chief Executive Officer of the Federation of Malaysian Consumers Associations, or FOMCA. And this session will be moderated by Encik Han Liu, the co-founder of Ringgit Plus. Before we begin our panel discussion today, it gives me great pleasure to now invite the panelists, moderator, and everyone participating to watch the opening remarks by Yang Berhormat Tuan Muhammad Shahar Abdullah, Timbalan Menteri Kewangan II. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Yang Berhormat Tuan Muhammad Shahar Abdullah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good morning. Yang berusaha Encik Azadin Ngah Tasir, Chief Executive Officer, Credit Counselling and Debt Management Agency AKPK. Yang berbahagia Datuk Dr. Paul Selvaraj, Chief Executive Officer, Federation of Malaysian Consumer Association FOMCA. Yang berusaha Encik Han Liu, Co-founder of Ringgit Plus, representative from Financial Education Network, Bank Negara Malaysia, Security Commission Malaysia, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Higher Education, Employee Provident Fund, EPF, Perbadanan Insurans Deposit Malaysia, PIDM, Credit Counselling and Debt Management Agency, and Permodalan Nasional Berhad. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed my great pleasure to be invited to deliver the opening remark today at the Financial Literacy Webinar Series. My appreciation goes to Bank Negara Malaysia as the co-chair of the Financial Education Network, FEN, for organizing this webinar in conjunction with the Financial Literacy Month in October 2020. The webinar is certainly timely amidst the financial challenges being faced by many of us due to the impact of COVID-19. As most of you know, the Ministry of Finance is not only entrusted to manage the nation's finances in an effective and prudent manner, we also have to ensure that our decisions take into consideration the well-being of the rakyat from all walks of life. Furthermore, having financially savvy rakyat who can manage their daily finances well and make good financial decisions on money matters, it will lend us a better chance of achieving our policy goals. This is why any decisions, activity, or forum on prudent management of personal finance and effort to raise our level of financial literacy and awareness are matters that are very close to me. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, datuk-datuk, saudara dan saudari sekalian, I was informed bahawa bulan literasi kewangan 2020 yang telah dirasmikan pada 6 Oktober 2020 yang lalu merupakan sebahagian daripada inisiatif FEN yang berterusan untuk meningkatkan tahap celik kewangan di semua lapisan masyarakat. Saya amat yakin pengetahuan yang ditimba daripada pelbagai program yang berkaitan dengan pendidikan kewangan melalui ceramah, webinar, kuis, pertandingan, perbincangan dan pameran secara online sepanjang bulan literasi kewangan ini berjaya mendidik masyarakat supaya lebih berupaya dalam membuat keputusan dengan bijak. Datuk-datuk, saudara dan saudari sekalian, statistik semasa menunjukkan bahawa hutang isi rumah kini mencecah 87.5% daripada KDNK. Manakala daripada Jabatan Insolvensi Malaysia turut menunjukkan bahawa sebanyak 11,800 daripada 46,760 individu atau 25.2% kes keberangkapan dari tahun 2017 sehingga 2019 terdiri daripada golongan muda berumur kurang daripada 35 tahun ke bawah. Situasi ini amat membimbangkan saya secara peribadinya. Tambahan dengan penularan pandemik COVID-19 telah memberi kesan yang jelas kepada kehidupan manusia sejagat di seluruh dunia termasuk rakyat Malaysia. Pesanan saya kepada rakyat perlulah mengambil langkah yang lebih berjaga-jaga dalam menguruskan kewangan pribadi masing-masing. Ada dalam kalangan kita yang mengambil langkah bijak untuk menilai semula kedudukan kewangan mereka dengan mencari alternatif dalam mengharungi norma baru. Namun, yang menjadi kekesalan kepada saya, ada juga kumpulan yang mudah terjejas tetapi mereka tidak bersiap sedia dari segi kewangan untuk menghadapi keadaan di luar jangkaan ini. Oleh itu, penerapan elemen literasi kewangan ke dalam gaya hidup dan urusan seharian masyarakat kini menjadi semakin penting, terutamanya dalam menghadapi cabaran kewangan hasil impak dan kesan COVID-19. Datuk-datuk, saudara dan saudari sekalian, saya percaya penganjuran webinar seumpama ini adalah tepat pada waktunya, iaitu pada ketika rakyat sedang bergelut dengan pelbagai isu kewangan akibat pandemik yang melanda, dan saya juga dimaklumkan oleh pihak penganjur, ahli-ahli panel webinar kali ini akan berkongsi pengalaman, pandangan dan yang paling penting adalah kisah-kisah benar berkisar tentang amalan pengurusan kewangan yang berhemat. Saya juga pasti saudara-saudari akan mendapat panduan dan tips-tips yang berguna melalui perbincangan ahli-ahli panel nanti mengenai perubahan dalam pengurusan kewangan ketika kita menghadapi waktu yang mencabar dan semasa ini dalam kita cuba menyesuaikan diri kita dengan kehidupan dan norma yang baru serta kepentingan insurans dan takaful dalam merancang kewangan pribadi masing-masing. Sakit sama mengaduh, luka sama mengiuk, yang berat sama dipikul, yang ringan sama dijinjing. Percayalah saudara-saudari, susah senang kita semua akan rasai secara bersama dalam menghadapi dan menangani saat getir menghadapi pandemik ini. Sudah pasti tanggungjawab kita adalah bersama untuk kita meningkatkan tahap celik kewangan dalam kalangan masyarakat Malaysia akan dapat diteruskan dengan iltizam yang jitu dan istiqamah yang berpanjangan. Bagi kita semua berupaya memperkasakan rakyat Malaysia dengan ilmu pengetahuan dan kemahiran kewangan yang berkesan. Hal ini, saudara-saudari, merupakan prioriti utama Kementerian Kewangan Malaysia dan Kerajaan Perikatan Nasional dalam memastikan kualiti hidup rakyat akan bertambah lebih baik dan sudah pasti kemakmuran dan kesejahteraan dapat kita nikmati secara bersama. Oleh itu, saya menggesa agar FEN dan rakan usaha samanya daripada sektor awam maupun swasta dapat menggembeling tenaga untuk merealisasikan matlamat strategi literasi kewangan kebangsaan pada tahun 2019 hingga tahun 2023. Dalam pada itu, kita juga semua perlu sedar akan tanggungjawab kita untuk menentukan hala tuju kewangan masing-masing. Ingatlah, teruskan usaha ini untuk meningkatkan ilmu pengurusan kewangan serta dapatkan nasihat daripada pihak yang berkelayakan. Supaya kita semua dapat membuat keputusan kewangan yang bijak pada waktu susah dan pada waktu senang. Akhir kalam, saya ingin berkongsi beberapa peribahasa Melayu berkaitan pengurusan kewangan yang telah diungkapkan oleh nenek moyang kita secara bijaksana dan melambangkan betapa mereka juga telah menempuh tahap celik kewangan dalam fasa-fasa kehidupan mereka. Yang pertama, ukur baju di badan sendiri. Yang kedua, cermat semasa banyak, jimat semasa sedikit. Malang tidak berbau, sediakan payung sebelum hujan. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, with this, let us now turn our attention to the discussions on Be Prudent, Take Control of Your Finances by Yang Berbahagia Encik Azadin Ngah Tasir, CEO of AKPK, and Yang Berbahagia Datuk Dr. Paul Silveraj, CEO of Fomka. Encik Han Liu, co-founder of Ringgit Plus, will moderate this first session of the webinar. On this note, I would like to thank Bank Negara Malaysia again for these invitations and wish all of you a productive webinar. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Yang Berhormat. Good morning. Good morning to everyone who's tuned in to this live webinar titled #BePrudent, Take Control of Your Finances. My name is Han. I'm the co-founder of Ringgit Plus, Malaysia's #1 financial product comparison platform. And with me, I have on the far right, Dr. Paul Savaraj, CEO of FOMCA, and in the middle, Encik Azadin Natasir, CEO of AKPK. This is a very lovely Monday morning. It's the first of 3 live webinars hosted by the Financial Education Network in conjunction with Financial Literacy Month 2020. So this year, we've got an all-new format where I'll be chatting with our panelists on the issues at hand and the subject title of the webinar. And then we'll be able to take questions from our live streaming audience right on Slido. So if you have a question, feel free to go to Slido, sli.do/beprudent, or you can just scan the QR code that appears at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen here, and we'll get to those questions towards the end of the webinar and answer any questions on personal finance that you have. So without further ado, let's get right into it. The title is Be Prudent, Take Control of Your Finances. But before that, let me set the scene. Let's tackle the elephant in the room. COVID-19, right? It's not just a health crisis, it is a very big health crisis. However, it's also an economic crisis, it's also a personal finance crisis. We've heard news of households' incomes being affected, people can't spend, therefore money is not flowing into the economy, impacting jobs and livelihoods. At Ringgit Plus, we've done a survey, we do a survey every year. This year, we've done it in conjunction with how people are impacted by COVID-19. And we found some worrying statistics, just some to mention. Half of Malaysians spend more than or the same as what they earn every month. 16% of Malaysians say that they cannot restart their installment payments from October onwards. So all in all, a pretty bleak picture of consumer finances. Maybe I'll pass it over to Dr. Paul first to maybe introduce a little bit about what FOMCA does and how he and FOMCA are seeing the COVID-19 pandemic impacting consumer and household finances in Malaysia. Dr. Paul, first to you.
Thank you, Han. FOMCA actually focuses on consumer protection and consumer empowerment. We want to make sure that consumers are prepared to face the challenges that they face in the market and especially in the financial market. FOMCA is always concerned about consumer well-being. And one of the key elements of consumer well-being is, of course, managing one's finances, because that impacts on every aspect of our life. And in the early 20s, we got data from especially the bankruptcy department and especially AKPK, when we saw increasing number of people getting into bankruptcy and getting into financial problems. And we began to become concerned whether consumers were managing their finances properly, and because they were not managing their finances properly, were getting into financial problems. That was our concern to us. And we began to monitor what is the situation. We were especially concerned about young workers because they were getting into serious issues. And for us, at least, the data is very worrying, very worrying. Even pre-COVID. Now, in several surveys that have been carried out, for example, 31% of consumers say that they have no control of their finances. Now, when it comes to savings, we all say savings is important. But in one survey, it was reported that 88% reported no savings. And out of that, in another survey, 68% said that they have not saved enough. So savings are low. Now, managing one's debt is very important. In our own survey, we found that 47% have excessive debt. Excessive debt means that a big part of their income is just paying utang. Yeah. And in one survey by Asian Institute of Finance, it found that 70% of young workers reported they spend more than they earn. I think you've just mentioned that, Han. So this is again an area of concern. Now, even insurance we say is important, and only 40%, taking insurance. So this is again, how are they managing their risks? And preparing for retirement is important, but only 72% have any plan for any retirement. So these are areas of concern. The next area is how prepared are consumers to face this in terms of their knowledge, in terms of their skills. And according to a survey has been reported that our literacy rate is only 36% compared to global and more developed countries of 60%. In fact, last week in one media it was reported that 70% of Malaysians need financial literacy. So that is our area of concern. And out of that, 28% say they are not confident of their financial knowledge, making decisions. And in another survey, 31% only reported that they have, they are well aware of how to deal with financial products. Now, all of these are of concern to us. And as I mentioned, Han, this is pre-COVID. Now, during COVID, I think two statistics are particularly of concern to us. Number one, 52% say they cannot raise 1,000 for emergency. COVID is an emergency. And another, only 24% say that if they lose their income, they can last for more than 3 months. And we know that during the COVID, many people have lost their incomes, have lost their jobs. So what will take them through this is having emergency savings to face this emergency. So I guess our first message is this, that to face this difficulty in facing the market as well as emergencies like this, to reach their own financial goals, consumer empowerment is important, and consumers have to take the initiative to educate themselves so that they're empowered to face the challenges in the market.
Okay, no, thanks, Dr. Paul. I guess, Encik Azadin, over to you, but a similar question in terms of, from the people that have sought assistance from AKPK, right? Are you seeing similar things? Are you seeing the same trends that Dr. Paul has said? And maybe also if you could introduce, what AKPK actually does and how they're involved in the whole financial ecosystem to everyone. So introduction as well as whether you're seeing the same trends in terms of worrying behavior, especially with your customers.
Yeah, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and salam sejahtera, Mr. Han and so Paul. Now, AKPK was established in 2006. We are an agency of Bank Malaysia. Now, we three services that we give. One is financial education. Secondly, we talk about financial counseling or advisory, and thirdly, we talk about a debt management program, where we do a tailor-made debt restructuring program for people in need. Now, we actually, looking into how do you create a financially savvy society through the wise use of credit, and where we make prudent financial management as a way of life. And by doing so, we are establishing that people are good, they can manage their finances, they can pay their loans, and so they'll be able to support the robust banking system in the country. Now, I think a lot of statistics been shared about COVID and the impact and so on. But I think more than just having said by Dato' on the emergency funds and so on, I think I would just touch a few questions on that. But probably on the financial education, we'll talk about it much later. Firstly, that we think the COVID has really, the pandemic actually has already opened up our eyes to do things which we do not do, that we don't think is possible before. And we never thought of this. For example, realization on the emergency funds. Now, because of the moratorium, automatic moratorium, and so on, so it gives actually an opportunity for people to build up their savings, and we are seeing some. We are doing this good behavior actually for people really building up their savings. And we look into the other thing that we realize is sometimes through this COVID, through this pandemic, we at the KPK, we take full opportunity because of the MCO, the CMO, MCO in March, April, May, and June to really hype out on our financial education, giving tips, giving things about financial education, what are tips to do, because this is the time when people are at home, they have time to look into all these materials and so on. So we took the opportunity. So we looked at, actually, from the COVID experience, we realized also that actually we can live a simpler life. we never thought of it, because for us, during COVID, we went through Hari Raya, and it was really a seamless, what do you call, a stress-free Hari Raya. What really matters actually was with you, to be with your family, with your loved ones. That matters. While we are in the banks, when I was in the banks, and even we always talk about when Hari Raya, especially when employees, they want even a festival advance. We don't have to give festival advance this time around, because people really do not really have to spend, and they concentrate on what matters. I think this is a good learning, a very good learning that we do that actually, you can live with less, actually. We can have more with less. And then we talk about, during this time, there's a lot of opportunity to enhance your knowledge and also skills.
Yep.
So this has been done. I think there's a good indication that we see. So I guess that sum up the first, yeah.
Okay, no, as in, so I'm hearing a lot of interesting things here. I mean, from you, Dr. Paul, it's the realization that emergency savings are very, very important, right? Because, I say emergency, I mean health crisis, in terms of external event impacting your capability to continue living your financial life as normal. So you mentioned half the people couldn't raise 1,000 ringgit. Hopefully, as a result of the last 6 months, Encik Azadi, you mentioned with the moratorium, people have been able to. And if you are one of the people that have not been able to, it's never too late to start, right? Starting that every time you get extra money, just like the last 6 months, hopefully you've been able to save. If not, have that mentality of saving for a rainy day, that kind of emergency. The kind of emergency, it may not be a health crisis going forward, it might be whatever, something else that might happen. The key is anything that happens outside of your control that impacts your ability to earn as well as manage your money. Or impacts your savings in a way that's something, a surprise spend that you have. And Encik Azadi, I love what you said earlier about having a mindset change. It's not just going through a crisis, feeling down about it. It's about thinking, look, we had MCO through Raya. How do I make the most out of it in this new normal of not just the health new normal, but the financial new normal, where you can live with less. You can be even happier with less. And it gets back to what's important about the festive periods, right?
No.
Yeah, it's about what you mentioned about being happy with family rather than material upgrades, as it were, and learning that any extra money, even if it's a festive advance, need not be spent. It can be saved towards your emergency funds. So thanks for that. I think that's really good in terms of what these two gentlemen are seeing in their institutions as a result of the COVID pandemic, not just impacting finances, but increasing awareness and realization to the importance of things like emergency fund and living with less. I guess, moving on a little bit to not just observation of the crisis, and not just how people are feeling, how people are doing, but more to do with individuals and how they can be empowered, right? So with the reductions in income that many people are feeling, I think we're seeing about a third of households that are contacted by banks today say, look, I've had income impacted, so help me with this. So that's quite a big sum of people, right? And it's very easy to just sit there and go, okay, what are the banks doing for me? What is the government doing for me? What is anyone else doing for me? But what else can individuals and households do to revisit their budgets during this time? Maybe I'll pass to Dr. Paul first to have a go at this one.
Yeah. I think we have been talking a lot about financial planning, financial education and things like that. But I think for some reason, people have not taken that seriously. During this COVID, the situation faced by consumers is something that's practically forced on them, in terms of income, and they're forced to face an emergency. Now, what has certainly happened is that they've been more cautious in their spending, which is good. They've increased their savings. They're focusing on essentials. And this is all good behavior, but if you do not build the right attitude to this, Our concern is when things go back to normal, they will return to their normal habits. So it's an important time of awareness, a time of understanding that the way that we manage our finances has consequences, and we need to make budgeting, planning as part of our life. In fact, in one survey that was found that I think less than 40% spend more than 30 minutes learning about finances. So we need to empower ourselves. I mean, in some sense, it's about what the knowledge are, what's the knowledge, what are the skills you need. But I think sometimes, I just had a financial education program yesterday, for example, and I realized that there are a lot of information on the internet, including, of course, from Ringgit Plus, but people are not aware. So when you need to make an important financial decisions, there are places you can go to get advice. Because if you do not get advice, you will depend on the person, for example, the financial product, selling you that product, but you yourself are not empowered to ask the right questions. So the two important things here, one is empower yourself in terms of knowledge and know where to go to seek information when you have to make an important decision so that you become truly an informed consumer in dealing with financial products.
Okay, so empowering yourself and asking the right questions seems like sensible things for households to do. Is there anything else that you feel, Encik Azadin, that households can do without having to look at agencies like yours or going to consumer associations that they can do internally within themselves? You mentioned earlier, live with less. Are there anything else that households can and should do to, say, balance their budgets, get their finances back on track? What are kind of the key things that you yourself or even at AKPK advise those type of consumers and households?
Yeah, thank you. I think there are a few things here. One, moving from what Dato' mentioned. Now, we in AKPK, we always talk about 4 A's, 4 A's. First, we talk about acknowledge. You have to first acknowledge that this is your problem. Now, you are, it's not a problem. You are responsible for your own finances. We say that, you have to have this mindset first. Because unless and until you are taking that mentality or that mindset, it's difficult because you will be, thinking it to other people and whatnot. But you need to have that. And secondly, because of that only, after you have acknowledged, then you will be able to analyze, to see what can be done, as Dato' mentioned, prioritize, needs and wants and all these sort of things. Look into your budget, track your finances, track your spending, where can you cut and these sort of things. And now that, during PK, we RMCO or even CMO and all those things before, now you do not go to the office, you have got your transportation, now you can channel it to your savings and those kind of things. And then real take action, the third is action. Take action, take corrective action. We have many cases. We are now engaged with a lot of workers, with a lot of agencies. We talk about the airlines, industry and so on, where we brought people into a lot of counseling and also advisory, where we put them into a debt management program, where some of them, we have a particular case where a person has got, normal, when you're working, you have got housing loan, you have got a personal loan. What do you do? That's why at this point of time, throughout our messaging, we have been telling people, right from the July, August, and so on, that come out early, go and see the banks. During this time, you need to maintain that kind of relationship with the bank, be in communication, tell them what's the issue, so that they can help you. Because, having no income, or reduced income, you need attention, you need people to help you. And these are what targeted assistance is all about. They are giving, either targeted assistance, payment holiday, or also reduced payments and so on. Even we at AKPK, that's what we did. We look into, we identify people who we think are affected by the COVID because of the industry and so on, and we give them assistance. Until today, we are doing that kind of assistance. So basically, we're selling that, apart from managing your finances and so on, seek help, go out, maintain communication and so on. And you can also take this opportunity, for example, to we talk about enhanced knowledge and whatnot, skills and whatnot, but look out for other income opportunities if there is, you know. And then you talk about, you know, how do we register with the right agencies so that we can get the kind of assistance, you know, because we have through other forums and so on, we hear that, you know, people not able to get assistance because particularly did not register. Yeah, so how do you get assistance? So we at AKPK, whenever we deal with customers, we also look into, apart from managing or researching the debt, we also look how do we complement the sense that how do we refer them to the relating agencies, for example, for upscaling, for SIP, for example, SOCSO, you know, and so on. So this is the kind of assistance that we'll be giving.
Okay, you mentioned 4 A's. I really.
Yeah. The last A is AKPK.
The last A itself is AKPK.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's acknowledge. That was the first one. The second one was analyze. The third was action.
Take action, and you know, you can't do it, then
the AKPK. I just want to pick up on something you mentioned. You said even AKPK was offering assistance during this time. Does that mean the people that you were advising or helping with restructuring also were given that kind of assistance during this last 6 months, or was that included as part of the moratorium period?
Oh yeah, these are people under our debt management program.
Yeah,
we have got over 300,000 people under debt management program. So during the automatic moratorium, we also provide automatic moratorium for them.
Okay.
And come October, they are supposed to make payment. So because of the COVID and whatnot pandemic, so we have identified a number of people who we think are affected. So we are giving them target assistance to them. Giving them either payment holiday extension of 3 months or reduced payments and so on. If you look into your statistics that you mentioned earlier on, you talk about it was a Banegara statistic saying that 40% given extension moratorium and 60% is reduced payment. For us at KPK, it's like 80-20. Because our customers are more vulnerable in that sense. Yeah.
Yep.
So those are the kind of assistance that we give. Yeah.
Okay, no, thanks, Encik Azadin.
Sorry, I want to add that as we are saying that we mentioned that the education that we give just now, one is we talk about go early, talk to the banks, and secondly for those to start making payments in October. So we start now, make payments in October. What we are seeing in AKPK basically is in October, the payments are coming in as normal. So we are quite happy to see that things moving to normalization again. The payments are as per pre-COVID, but actually it's too early to see, at this point of time, because it might be a reason of because they have been saving this money, not paying for the last 6 months, so they have some money now to pay. Yeah. We hope that that's not being the case. We hope that they are really able to pay because of their good cash flows. Yeah, but nevertheless, we are prepared to continue. Helping them in the event that in future months, they have issues and so on.
Okay. No, thanks for that, Encik Azadin. I think that's really interesting to hear. Like even if you end up in the most vulnerable of segments, there is still lots of help for you. I think, but hopefully for our viewers and viewers, please, those watching the live stream, please again feel free to ask any questions on Slido. The QR code should be on the bottom right corner of the screen. Just ask away. I'll be certainly pulling those questions out and challenging our panelists. But I think even before we get to the vulnerable part of society, right? Before households, consumers, singles, whether you're single or married, what are the things that trigger change, right? I mean, we mentioned COVID. So, Dr. Paul, what do you think are things that can really trigger change in behavior towards being more prudent in your financial management? What are the key things? You mentioned earlier what to do, right? Which is empower yourself and then ask the right questions, right? But then what do you feel is the key catalyst for change in prudent financial management behavior? As in, why do people not do it today also?
I think one of the biggest motivators of change is a crisis. And COVID is a crisis. And I think that's a good learning lesson for all. Yeah? I mean, because the COVID exposes what happens if you do not save for it, you do not prepare for it. I mean, it's not the best way to learn, but we have to learn from the crisis. That financial management is a crucial skill, and especially in a crisis, the consequences of not preparing, of not managing, you face the consequences. I think that's a tough lesson. On a broader scale, I think three things bring about change. One is an awareness. An awareness, for example, that it is your responsibility. I mean, other agencies have a role, AKPK helps, other agencies help, but the final responsibility of managing your finances is your responsibility. And that means, acquiring the knowledge, acquiring the skills, and also acquiring the information, for example, where to go to make decisions. So when you develop the right awareness and you develop the right attitude towards how you manage your finances, now we cannot run away that managing finances is difficult. Your income is fixed, but your expenses includes future expenses, includes emergency expenses, and in interacting with the market, we're also dealing with complex products. And today, consumers have to take greater responsibility. I mean, in those days, 10, 15 years ago, whether it's education, healthcare, retirement, people were pretty reliant on the government institutions. But today, we talk of private education, we talk of private healthcare, and even retirement. We all know that what's saved is insufficient, which means you have to take greater responsibility. So when you realize that you have to take greater responsibility, then then the urgency, would be there for you to better manage your finances. But it's not easy. But there are resources ahead. I mean, there are agencies that provide financial education. Financial education is available on the internet through various means. There are very specific ways of which you can deal to get specific information when you interact with the market in terms of products. So the key thing here is taking greater responsibility and knowing where to go for help, to empower yourself. And of course, if you get into trouble, you go in the fourth A, which is to make its team. But it's building that awareness and knowledge that's crucial.
Yeah. I think thanks for that. I mean, what you mentioned is key, and that's part of the reason why we exist as well at Ringgit Plus, right? Which is we want to help people as much as possible before they become part of that vulnerable group, which you mentioned, right? Giving people the resources to know, okay, what is a loan? What are credit cards? What does debt mean for me? What is a type of good debt? What is a type of bad debt, etc., before they get to become a vulnerable group segment that ends up going to AKPK. But I mean, in line with taking empowerment of my own education journey, right, and saying, hey, thanks, Dr. Paul. Like we've gone through a crisis. I'm now not just worried, but a little bit more aware that this is very important. Where can I go? If I turn to AKPK, what kind of education programs are out there? For example, that Encik Azadin, your company provides that can help me learn these things as well as empower myself.
I guess in empowerment that we mentioned in financial education, we also look into what are the factors that can nudge or can leapfrog the education, and as well as to create the behavioral changes that we need. So we talk about probably there must be a mandating behavior, where we do something which is mandatory. Talk about intervention which is mandatory. Like for example, we have implemented a few. We talk about one, Rumahku, where at this point of time where Bank Negara come out with a special scheme for housing below 300,000, and for these people, just to make sure that they are ready to make the purchases and so on. So they go through an online learning before and get a certificate before the banks even decide to process your application. I mean, this is good because along the way they learn, and we have also cases where we see along the way they decided not to proceed with the buying because they are not ready. So this awareness is very important, that before making a commitment. And for example, we talk about recently we do an education program with the Ministry of Education, where we have all the teachers in Malaysia to go through an online module as during the MCO. This gives a realization on the basic financial education. It's compulsory. It takes about 2 days of your training because it's mandated to you, and it makes you. And what we see is it nudges them into doing other things, into doing other online learning. That because of the mandatory and so on, they do others. So this is something which is good. And probably the last I would talk about teachable moments. where you need to strike the iron when it's hot. You know, if for example you talk about savings, you know, it is when they get their salary that is where the messaging on savings comes in.
Okay.
That makes it. We do quite a number of programs on this. We talk about, we do it for baby, where we have collaboration, where we talk about, you know, for parents to be, you know, what are the kind of expenses that you must look into, and we have a savings scheme with partnering with a bank and so on. And we talk about do it together, you know, where newlyweds, you know, so that they are aware, you know, that I want to spend. What is the spending that is involved, you know, when you go into a wedding and so on. So this is important, you know, because we saw that, you know, through the statistics and so on, we talk about 25% of the divorce cases is because of financial. So this is some of the things that I think is necessary, not just a personal awareness, but you must also give some form of nudges and so on, so that people will really have to do the education and so on. For example, in AKPK itself, close to my heart, what we did, we make sure that every year we will check the financial what do you call situation of our staff. This is a yearly affair to make sure that here we're talking about financial education, we're talking about good financial habits, but we ourselves are not practicing and not walking the talk. So we make sure that internally. So this is mandatory intervention. So interventions like this, if being applied by employers, you know, to make sure that people want to ask for transfer, people want to be promoted, you look into their financial affairs, I think it will promote the kind of financial awareness and empowerment.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, thanks, Encik Azadin. I think we're almost out of time, the us part, before we get to the questions from the audience part. But Dr. Paul, is there anything you would like to add to what Encik Azadin is saying around programs that are out there and available, and why we should do it?
I think that I think one of the things that we have found is, although there are a lot of information out there, people are not aware. So we need to make them aware of what are the programs out there, there are a lot of things, for example, on the net, when it comes to scams, there are ways of verifying, there are a lot of information out there which people are not aware. So the first thing is, of course, to make people aware of this thing, so that, you know, they know that there is a resource. If not, you would say financial education is important, but you do not give them the avenue. I think that's very challenging. I think, just to sum up, if I can, I think young people today especially are facing a very challenging economic environment in terms of jobs, in terms of cost of living, you know. So certainly there are certain things the government can do, should do, but also it places a greater responsibility on them to take greater charge of their life and take the actions, take the steps on their own to develop the capacity to deal with this. If not, I think things are really going to be tough in the future.
No, thanks so much. You know, thanks Dr. Paul, thanks Encik Azadin. I think what I like about that is there are a few things you can do, right? Increase your income, ask the right questions. If you're employed, why not ask your employer to send you for training on financial management, right? So I think that example from Encik Azadin is great, which is, you know, you don't have to be an AKPK employee, you can be any employee. Ask your employer to help in that way, right? We'll come to the exciting part of the webinar, I guess, which is the part where we take some questions from the audience. Are we ready? We're ready, right? Let's look at the first question, and please keep them coming, and upvote if you want on the questions that matter to you the most, and I'll be picking them up for our panelists. Okay, first question is in Malay, if you allow me, from our audience, which is saya dengar kalau saya pergi AKPK untuk nasihat, saya tak boleh buat loan baru. Betul ke? I guess this question is for Encik Azadin.
No,
betul ke?
Sure. I think this has always been the question asked, you know, that if I go to AKPK, and I would not be able to take new loans. But I think what is important is what is the issue at hand. The issue at hand is you are having a financial issue, a problem of paying back the loans and so on. Even if you do not come into our program, you will not be able to get a new loan anyway, right? So why not come, we give you assistance, so that during this period of time we nurse you, you know, you can become better. And once you're over, you get your financial intact, you can always go out back, you know, into the banking industry and provide loan. Because you must remember, loans are not there are two things to it. One is financial records. Secondly is financial capability. So it doesn't mean that, you know, if you don't go to AKPK, you will get a loan. No, because at the end, although your record is good, but what about financial capability? Likewise, if you graduate from AKPK's program, you know, you will be able to get new loans if the financial capability is there. Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, Encik Azadin is saying, you know, if you can't get it anyway, there's, you know, there are not many things you can do anyway when it comes to a new loan. So you should go to AKPK to sort that out first before you.
To the banks, you know,
Yeah.
go to the banks first,
Yeah.
and you know, and then if
If
you have
they
multiple loans, you're not able to come to AKPK.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Encik Azadin. The next one looks like it's for Dr. Paul, so I'll shoot that to you.
Yeah.
The question is, at the moment, we need consumer spending to stimulate the economy. That's a common line of thinking, right? While at the same time, people are skeptical and they rather save. So what's your view on this? We need to spend versus you're telling me I need to save. How do we balance that dichotomy?
Now, one of the interesting things during this COVID is saving rates went up. Saving rates went up. And of course, the general economic is that unless you spend, you will recover. But I think the principle of prudent management is always there. You spend what you can afford to spend. I mean, for now, for example, interestingly, car sales are up. Now, despite, you know, but who are these people buying cars? Are they people who can afford to have a regular income, or people who may not be able to afford, but because price is lower, they buy, and they get into problem. So whether there's COVID, no COVID, you spend according to what you can afford to spend. Not spend for the sake of spending and then get into financial problem on your own. So your personal household, the principles are the same. You know, we have certain principles of how much you should save, for what you should save. That will always be there. But, you know, if you can afford for something, then, you know, it's perfectly all right to spend.
Okay. I mean, that's really interesting, Dr. Paul, because the way I look at it is, for those people who still remember what it's like to go flying on an airplane, it's when the cabin decompression comes, the first advice that people tell you is you should put the oxygen on yourself first before your children or people under your care, right? So I have that view on this, which is before spending and saving the economy first, save yourself first, then you can save the economy. So that's how I think about that kind of argument to make. Okay, I think we do have time for a couple more questions. This one's interesting. This one's a very good one, probably for either of you. How do we determine the right amount to put aside to face any unexpected situation, given the uncertainty today? I guess this is more of a question of how big should my emergency fund be? Yeah, so
I think the general principle is it's 3 to 6 months. I mean, that is the general idea, that you should have 3 to 6 months of your expenditure to put for emergency savings. And we always suggest, if possible, put it in a separate account. And be very judicious, be very critical of when you want to spend that amount, you know. So that's a general idea. But I think one of the things that I want to re-emphasize is the COVID has exposed what happens if you do not have that amount. Because if you do not have that amount, two things happen. One is you have to borrow, or second, you have to dig into your savings that maybe you kept for other purposes. So that depletes your overall savings. So keep that amount separately as a general principle, 3 to 6 months, and use it very carefully.
Okay. So two tips there. One is 3 to 6 months of expenses, right? Not salary, just to cover your expenses, you mentioned, as well as keeping it on the side, somewhere where you don't really think about it, such that you can always dip into it when you need to. And I think to give some context why 3 to 6 months, it's been more than 6 months since we've had the pandemic hit Malaysia. So that gives you a sense of the kind of length of time a crisis can unfold for. So hopefully that helps with the audience. Probably the last question, but we might have time for another one. How best can we educate youngsters? I'm guessing 16 to 35-year-old people to be more responsible and not be too drawn into lavish lifestyles portrayed in social media. I suppose again, Dr. Paul first for you, and then Encik Azadin, you can answer this one too.
I think it's a great challenge, because whether we like it or not, we live in a very consumption society. I mean, those days, if you wanted to go shopping, you have to get into your car, drive through the jam, find parking, and then, and you have to open your purse to make the payment. And when you open your purse, you get worried because there's not enough money there. But today at home, you can purchase what you like And not only that, after you purchase, you get a voucher, for the next purchase. And as long as you don't spend the voucher, you feel you are wasting money. So you buy another $50 there to get you, so that you can benefit from the voucher. So I think our young generation is under a lot of pressure, and purchasing is too easy. Not easy, but too easy. so these are the pressures that they face. But again, when you face these pressures, the data shows there are consequences. Asian Institute of Finance was quite shocking. 70% of those below 33 spend more than they spend more than they earn.
Yep.
So these are consequences. So I think we need to constantly remind, those constant messaging, these kind of messages. Financial education is fine, but I think constant messaging through social media is important to create that awareness that finally the responsibility is with you. Yes, there are temptations, but you have to take that kind of discipline. Actually, finally, to be honest, it's not about knowledge and skills. It's about self-discipline. Yeah. And for all of us, it's tough, but we have to do it because there are consequences.
Yeah. Probably our last question, but let's see if we have time. It's very uncertain times now. Should we postpone big purchases that we had planned to get like before? So, for example, property or cars, or continue life like normal? I think maybe Encik Azadin, you can have a go at this one, and then
okay.
Yeah, I'll pass it to
I'm expecting the question saya buntu, So I said, Anda buntu, kami bantu. That's AKPK. Anyway, I think the question of whether you should delay a purchase or what kind of money is enough, for you and so on. It practically depends on your lifestyle, so that then exactly how much, and your affordability. To some people who can afford, probably this is the best time to take advantage of the situation and so on to buy big things and so on. But it really depends on the financial situation that you are. Basically, that actually matters. Of course, to be prudent is you save, and because you do not know how long the pandemic and so on, and the situation, or there might be other crises and so on. So no matter what, you need to save. But again, it depends on your lifestyle and so on.
Yeah. So I mean, there's no right answer for everybody. It depends on where you are specifically, right? If you feel you need to save, then delay. Otherwise, you can go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, this one probably Dr. Poh would love to answer this one, which is the biggest source of problems to Malaysians' poor financial management? Is it ignorance? Is it low literacy itself, or is it actually low income? Look, I'm very literate, but let's say I have low income, so that's why I have poor management. So, what do you think is bigger?
I think for every group, the challenge of managing finances is a challenge. But for those with low income, I think it's a bigger challenge, especially in this time of increasing cost of living. But that only means that the challenge is greater in terms of saving. Now, we always not only talk about financial management, we also talk of financial well-being. And financial well-being means having a sense of control of your finances, having the confidence that you're managing your finances well. Now, in one research that was done, people asked how much income is enough. So the person who earns 2,000 says it's not enough. Even if I earn 10% more, it's enough. The person who earns 15,000 says it's not enough. I have another 10%, that's enough. So income can be never enough. But the sense that whether you're earning 2,000 or 15,000, how you manage within that, that is the issue. If you're able to save, you're able to take care, build that sense of self-confidence in terms of how you're managing your finances. Now, ignorance is always an issue. But whatever income, you need the skill and you need to manage so that you have a sense that you're managing the finances within the income that you are earning. I think that's a challenge for everyone.
Yeah. So it's not so much like I have high income, therefore I have high literacy or high good management, right? Because I'm sure, Encik Azadin, you've also seen high income but ended up being a vulnerable and in trouble that they had to get their loans restructured. So it's not about just how wealthy or how much income you have, it's how you manage your own
within what you have.
Within what you have, whether you're earning 2,000 ringgit or 15, 20,000 ringgit, it's that is the same level of management needed.
True.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
If I may add, lower low income, you're more vulnerable in that sense because you do
it
not
is.
have buffers, you know. So that's why it makes more important that you make the right decisions and so on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. We have new question, but I'll go with the second question there because I think Encik Azadin is desperate to answer that one, which is in Malay as well, if you don't mind me. Saya baru saja dibuang kerja minggu lepas. Apakah yang saya perlu buat? Saya buntu.
This is the one I mentioned, saya buntu tadi. We have a quotation here says, Anda buntu, kami bantu. Now, the thing here is, of course, you know, this is what the targeted assistance is all about. You know, when you lose your job or you have reduced income, the issue is if you have loans, you know, what you need to do is, you know, go to the relevant banks and so on your finances, discuss with them. You know, then they'll be able to help you to draw out a new prepayment program and so on. You know, if, for example, you do not have loans or whatever, you just need advice. I mean, you can come to AKPK. We can also advise you accordingly what probably step that you can be taken, or if we have an opportunity to refer to the complementary or the social synergy, there are the agency that might be able to help. So we'll be able to give that kind of advice. Yeah.
So are you saying that even if I have lost my job after September 30th, I can still have that kind of targeted assistance?
Yeah, it's ongoing. I think this has been going on, not only for this period. I think prior to this also, the communication with the banks is always open. And for this, especially now, I think because of the crisis, the banks are more open to accept and look into whatever issues that you have. Yeah.
Okay, cool. We have time for one last question, which is also in Malay. I guess maybe either of all three of us can answer this, which is macam mana nak buat budget ringkas untuk orang yang tak ada ilmu kewangan? How do I create a budget? Simplified for myself.
Okay, I think one of the tools that Bank Negara has, I would also like to mention is MyTabung, MyTabung, yeah, which I myself used, to be honest. Two reasons for that. One is you can use it to monitor your expenditure, which is crucial in budgeting, and number two, you can also use it to prepare a budget and compare your budget and your actual expenditure. So there are simple tools out there which help to monitor your expenses, set a budget, and make that comparison so that when you're looking at your consumption, you can decide, is this something that I can be a better consumer by decreasing expenses? Is my savings enough? So unless you know your expenses and you have some kind of plan, the plan that we use, as a general principle is that 40% of expenditure, 30% of savings, and 30% of paying your debts. That's a general formula. But unless you budget, unless you compare with what you actually spend and then make that adjustments, then the budget is useful to you. I think that is my view. Yeah.
Jazzy, what do you think?
No, I think
similar kind of thoughts, right? I mean, for us, budgeting is a very, very sensitive and personal thing. What we see at Ringgit Plus is that there are many different types of people who budget in many different ways. So it's important to remember that you budget your own way. Rather than having to follow any specific templates. Because if you try to follow a specific templates, it can get quite frustrating. The best way is to just write down what you spend monthly, right, and what you earn. And don't forget the yearly things. Because the number one error that people forget is the not monthly things. It's the yearly things, right? Which things like your car insurance, your annual holiday, if you you can afford your holidays, exactly. People are People very easily remember their monthly expenses, but not the yearly ones, which tend to trip people up, right? Because they assume I can save, but then they get to the end of the year and realize, I thought I could save. What happened? In the budgeting process, what we find is many people forget about the yearly things. So that's hopefully a handy tip for the viewers out there, for me. Thanks so much to our panelists for sharing those very wise words. I mean, allow me, viewers, to give a very quick summary of today's discussion. The title of the webinar is #BePrudent, Take Control of Your Finances. I hope in the last hour you've been able to learn a few tricks, learn a few tips about how to actually do that, take control, right? Encik Azadin's mentioned the 4 A's on his side. Dr. Paul's mentioned how you must get aware, have self-discipline, ask questions of the right people. The resources are there, right? The folks like Bank Negara have made resources like My Tabung ready for you. So go ahead and use them. But in summary, COVID-19 has been a tremendous shock, not just for the health situation in our country, but also the financial situation of households and individuals. It's made us very important, realize how important it is to prepare for emergencies. People were not prepared. Hopefully they get prepared now. Set aside an emergency budget, 3 to 6 months of expenses, put it somewhere else in a separate account. That's a tip from Dr. Paul. From Encik Azadin, you can be happy with less. In fact, you can be happier with less. Review your personal situation. Do you really need this thing or that thing during a festive period, whether it's Raya, Chinese New Year, Deepavali, doesn't matter. Do you actually need those things, or can you get by on less? Can you be happy with less? A couple of extra tips also. When you come into trouble, whether it's a loss of job, reduction of income, don't wait till you become part of that group where you're vulnerable, right? Talk to your bank early on. They're there to help as long as you don't start defaulting. When you start defaulting, it's when they will struggle to help you, right? So as soon as you talk to them early on, the earlier you talk to them, the more they can help. Hopefully, we managed to answer quite a lot of the questions from the audience. Now, you didn't, don't worry. There are 2 more episodes in this webinar series. The next one is on Wednesday, same time, 11 a.m. On this channel. And the third and final one will be this Friday, 11 a.m. On this channel too. You can ask all your questions there. If you didn't manage to ask any, or didn't manage to get your questions answered this time round. On Wednesday, we've got Suraya Zainuddin from Ringgit or Ringgit on the channel, on how you can manage your own personal finances, from someone who is a personal finance aficionado, as it were. But that's it from us. Thanks so much again to Dr. Paul from Fonka and Encik Azadin from AKPK. And that's it from me, Han Liu, your moderator from Ringgit Plus. Back to you, Lisa.
Thank you very much to all our esteemed panelists and the moderator, Encik Han Liu, for the very engaging session. I would also like to thank all of you who have taken the time to participate in this webinar today. I hope everyone has gained some useful insights and helpful tips from today's session. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the session today. Before we close, just a gentle reminder to fill up the feedback form at www.fenetwork.my/feedback for future improvements. Thank you everyone and have a very good day ahead.